hear you very well.
Is it the microphone? Which one? This one is now.
It's not.
No, it helps if you turn it off.
Right. Green one. Green means go.
Yes.
Better.
It's like you have to. I think it was Captain America's powering that helped this microphone get back on. Okay. It's called the People's Panel because we have a parent-child panel, so you'll get to hear from both the parent and we could call them kids, right? Kids' perspective. So the first question or starting out would be to tell us your name and a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about your hearing loss because that's part of why we're here today. And then who are you connected to? Like who's your mama? Who's in your family is what we want to know about, okay? And who wants to start?
So I'm Maisie Tangasol, and I'm going into my sophomore year of high school, and I'm from Sheridan. I have a bilateral sensory neural hearing loss that's progressive, and right now it's mild to moderate. And then my mom's here.
I'm Betsy. I'm Maisie's mom.
Okay, I'll go. So you guys, I was on the panel yesterday, so I'm sure many of you remember me. I'm Gabby Ryman. I just recently graduated from UW, and I am profoundly deaf, and I wear bilateral cochlear implants, and I'm here with my mom, Kim Ryman. Okay, I introduced her.
My name is Mackenzie, and I love animals. I have a bilateral sensorineural hearing loss, severe, and my mom and sister are here.
And I'm Sarah. And my everyone is in the daycare.
Very good. Okay. Next slide. Welcome. Next slide. Might be out going on. Topic 1. Who is the coolest person you know? And it doesn't have to be your mom. It could be anybody in the whole world. Who is like the coolest person you know?
Myself.
Ooh.
I'm sure my mom would love me to say her. But no, I actually can't pick because I've met a ton of really neat people. So, I actually don't really know. I really have met, I guess a girl in Tennessee I met, her name's Delaney. She really likes to kind of grab life and just go and do what she wants to do. And she does yoga on a paddleboard on the river, which I did not know is a thing, but she's pretty cool.
My coolest person would probably be my grandpa because he also has hearing aids, but he is also my favorite grandpa.
Wow. How about your moms? Do you have a cool person or a favorite person? Anybody, even outside of your family? Somebody in music or TV or sports? Is there anybody you admire? No? Kim has one?
Well, I mean, this is a person I really like and admire is Jane Goodall. I love the research she's done with chimpanzees, chimpanzees. So, and then I guess there's a celebrity crush of The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. So.
So I'm kind of obsessed with the Olympics. So anybody going to the Olympics right now is the coolest person that I don't really know, but talk to me in July and you'll think we're the best of friends.
Christina Gucci.
Yeah, she's my favorite.
They're Facebook friends.
Okay, well, that would be a good question for you to think about the next time you're going to a long drive. And the reason why I ask about this is because we're so good about establishing connections with other families, providers, deaf, hard of hearing mentors. All of that's important. It is fun as people, and especially with your kids, to find out and recognize who else, that we kind of look to and why. And it might be somebody so completely different from what you do. I'm with you with the Olympics. I say every year I'm not going to watch them, and then I start, and then I cannot stop. And I'm not an athletic person, but I love seeing what they can do. It's amazing. So yeah, so it's just kind of fun to think about. So I had to know. Very good. Next topic. What for the kids? What is the best part about being deaf and hard of hearing? And then for the parents, what has been the best part about having a child who's also deaf and hard of hearing for you? So the best part.
My favorite part is that I can turn my hearing aids off whenever my sister's being annoying.
Very good.
I'll do my favorite. It's been seeing a different world as far as the deaf, hard of hearing world. Being on boards and groups like Hands and Voices and stuff. Never would have known it existed, and just meeting fantastic people.
I was just gonna say, I have to agree with Mackenzie. I like being able to have that option to just take them off and just enjoy the silence. Like, something about that is really peaceful for me. So like Saturday mornings are my quiet mornings. I just go without them off, but I also really enjoy all the opportunities I've had and just places I've been able to go just because I am dumb, such as academic goal.
And the best part of me about being a parent of a child with a hearing loss is kind of Sarah's same response too. The new perspectives in life, the new friends we've met, and just raising an overall cool kid. And she's a good sibling to her siblings. But she's like Mackenzie, I don't want to listen to you. I'll just turn those off.
So probably it's kind of fun sometimes when people are like making jokes about like, oh, are you deaf? I'm like, actually? And then they're just like, people are like just watching like their jaw drop and just kind of messing with them.
So I was a teacher of the deaf for 8 years before Maisie was born, 10 before she was identified. And the perspective is very different on the parent side of the table. So I feel like I have learned a lot. And also we've gotten to spend more time, just the two of us, like at Hands and Voices things, without her siblings. So that's probably my favorite part, is the one-on-one time.
Topic 3, what was it like growing up deaf, hard of hearing in your family or your community? Any experiences or anything that you can share with us that might help families starting out?
Okay, I guess I can start, because for me, when I was growing up, I'm the only person with a hearing loss in my family. You know, my sister has one in one frequency in one ear, but it doesn't really impact life the way my hearing loss affects me, but like I was the only one in my elementary school really with the hearing loss, and same thing for middle school, and you don't know a lot of people like you, but why high, and just like the stuff Hands and Voices does, and getting to meet other deaf and hard of hearing kids has really allowed me to see that there's other people out there like me. But again, like Wyoming's a rural state, you don't have a very big population, so you just kind of get used to being the only one there. But, you know, I don't regret that.
Sometimes my family can forget that I do and like start mumbling words and stuff. Mainly my sister. And it's true. So that can be hard sometimes. And then I don't know.
So right now, pretty much my whole life actually, I've been like the only one that like in my town or like area who has a hearing loss. Like right now, I'm in my grade. There's no one else who is deaf, and I don't think there's anyone in the school. But yeah, it's just weird to like be the one exception, like, cause not everybody knows, and people can get really annoyed with like asking for clarification multiple times.
Like, just to add on to like the last part of what Maisie said of people getting annoyed because, you know, they don't have a lot of clarification. I did have a lot of issues like in middle school and like the early part of high school of people thinking I was stuck up because they would say from behind, you know, and try and get my name, like, hi Gabby, and I wouldn't respond at all, you know, and that's because I didn't hear them. But, you know, that's why it's important to talk with people and educate them and let them know I can't hear you when you're coming from behind me.
And I wanted to add, Mackenzie, what you said, yes, that is true, that even in our own family, people can forget that we don't hear everything. And that was part of the PowerPoint yesterday about taking a look at becoming aware of what might get in the way, the barriers of feeling included, because you think, you know, that won't happen, but it's really easy no matter how old you are in our busy life today for people to forget, and we have to remind them, you know, that we didn't understand what they said or whatever. So that's a good point too.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
And that's also, Gabrielle has a harder time hearing male voices. And my husband's a very soft, low talker. And she's always asking, what? And then for the longest time, I would interpret. And I finally said, it's not okay for me to be interpreting. He needs to remember. So I'm like, honey, Gabby's asking you a question. And so he is a softer talker. And so that's something else that we've learned with our family.
That is a good point with our kids as they grow up. It tends to be more the moms that we naturally look to them for that help to fill in the blanks. I'll be honest, I still do that when I go home if my mom and I are out at a restaurant and I didn't understand what the server or wait person said. I'll look at my mom and she'll usually tell me, just like back when we were kids, it's kind of a good feeling. But truly, you know, I should, at my age, say to the server, would you repeat that? What did you say? And I want to just acknowledge that while advocacy is a goal, and all the professionals and providers will make sure that's a part of your child's goal, IEP plan, IFSP is advocacy, it's a good thing, but it's a lifelong process, and it takes work to keep doing that over and over again. And you think about yesterday when you introduced yourselves and you were given the microphone, you're kind of like for a moment, it's like, oh, and sometimes that's how it feels for us. So there's that balance with advocating advocating and learning not to always look at, the person who knows is best for that. It happens, it's okay, but just be mindful. That was good that you noticed that.
We learned.
Topic 4, the opposite. What is the hardest part about being deaf, hard of hearing? And some of you shared a little bit about that. Anything else?
Whenever I have sleepovers with my friends, they sometimes forget that when I take them out, I cannot hear anything else. So they try and talk to me, but then and then I never reply and say, sorry, I didn't hear you in the morning, but they just get over it, but they never really learn.
And for me, it's like not everyone's voice is super hard to hear. Like some voices, it's like it's kind of weird because I have a friend who has a super high pitched voice and I can hear her fine, but then there are other people who have like just kind of normal voices and I can't understand anything they're saying. And so since it's not everyone, it's just hard. And also like I tend to lean in more because like when you can't hear someone you lean in, then that's also people like step back or like think you're weird.
I guess for me, like one of the hardest things is just, I sometimes just get tired of advocating. Like it always feels like, you know, because it is an everyday thing and it's going to be something for my whole life, but it is something that I just get so exhausted by sometimes. But, you know, there's strategies for dealing with that, and I make sure that I explain things in simple terms, which helps a lot.
And parents, anything that you've noticed that is hard, either for yourself or for your kids?
I guess to start off is one of the things is seeing my child's frustration when she's having to advocate for herself all the time for some things that seem common sense. Gabby is trying to get accommodations to take the MCAT, and they won't allow her to wear her implants. And it seems like common knowledge, but they just don't know a lot about hearing aids or implants or how they work, and she gets so frustrated. And so it's my job as a parent to remind her, honey, it's going to be okay. We'll find another way around it. We'll keep doing this. But it is advocating, and our dear good friend Joe in the back of the room who told us, Gabrielle, this is a lifelong job. It's every day, and you'll just be paving the path for somebody else. So.
Hardest would be just doing everyday things that you have to tweak a little something to make it work for her, but you just do it, so I don't know, it's just every day.
I think the hardest is watching Maisie, like in a conversation, if somebody says something and her response is a little off, wanting to step in and rescue and say, just ask it again. Like she knows what you're saying. And she was in a spelling bee, and I don't remember the word, but she's an excellent speller. She's always been a good speller, and it was two words that sounded almost exactly the same, and if you think you heard it, you don't ask for a repetition. So she spelled the word she thought she heard, and she got out. And that was just hard as a mom to say, she spelled that, like you can tell she didn't hear that word. And we had talked, she did a really good job beforehand, giving her microphone to the person speaking, but where they wanted her to stand was kind of in front of the person giving the word. So for her, she would have had to turn all the way around to look at the person's face. So you don't know until you're in the middle of it, and then it's kind of awkward to be in the audience and want to go, hold on, this doesn't work. So I think that's probably the hardest.
That's a good story. And talk about words that sound the same. completely different. Now, sometimes while you'll see those little kids stamp their foot that you that they could watch a movie, but what you said was, would you like a smoothie? And they go, and they're so mad because you thought, you know, you were gonna let them watch a movie. And it happens as you grow up. I called Jody on the phone one time to find out where he was, and he said he was at the grocery store. And I said, well, I just came from the grocery store. What are you getting? And he said that he was at the store and he needed to get something, and what I heard was completely opposite. I mean, like not opposite, completely different. So you've met him, and he's a good man, he's a good person, you know, committed, invested in families and children. I'm telling you this because the word I heard, I knew it didn't make sense, but I could not figure it out. So he was at the grocery store because we needed propane gas for the grill. So he started like 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, came home, and he said, so what did you think I said? Because I could not get it. So I thought you said you were at the grocery store, and he was, and I said, and I thought you said you needed to buy cocaine. And he just looked at me, thank goodness he's a nice person, and he said, you cannot buy cocaine at the grocery store. I know that, but it was interesting because it made so much sense how I heard it, that it made no sense to what he said. And those are hard moments, because in our head, we're trying to figure out, did we hear this, or did we hear that? Did we hear movie, or did we hear smoothie? And let's just say it's always going to be propane, okay? So, but those are tough moments, you know, and a spelling bee too, and you have the pressure. And I like what you said too about you don't know until it's already happened. It's like, so sharing that story paved the way for everybody else. And I was going to add for you for staying overnight. That's a hard one. And I tell them with all the kids, more so the girls, because they seem to want to talk all night long, is to go to like Walmart or wherever and buy those little mini flashlights and take them, and you've got, you know, a little mini, everybody has a little mini flashlight, because who does not like a flashlight? And then it'll give you, even after they turn the lights out, it'll give you more light so you can see. It helps. Although I know girls will still talk at night, but it's fun. Did you want to say something, Mackenzie? Oh, I'm sorry. Maisie, sorry.
Sure. So,
Oh, I thought I saw like you want, oh, okay, no.
so sometimes, like what you said, with thinking somebody said a different word than they actually did, it can be a lot harder, because sometimes I hear a word that makes just as much sense in a conversation, and like it's not that word, and then that's what I thought they said, and I might bring it up later, and they're like, I didn't actually say that, the person that I'm talking to.
That's a good point. A lot of times it's almost the same, yeah. Really good. Okay, what's after this? Anybody? Any other comments or? Need a little discussion. Okay, go for it.
Okay, I guess my mom just wants me to share, we call it the buttered toast story. And my family, because like I did FFA in high school, so my ag teacher towards the end of one semester was like, let's just take, you know, instead of doing class, let's just go out for breakfast. So I went to Johnny J's, you know, got all settled, and the waitress is going around asking everybody, you know, what they would like. And like we're ordering at this point, and you know, I just wanted like eggs, toast, and bacon. That was the meal I ordered. And she was talking more like aside, because she asked me like, well, what do you want with that? And I just said buttered toast. Like, that's what I want. But she was meaning like, do you want a side, you know, a cup of fruit, or I think they had sausages too, or whatever, you know, sides come with breakfast. But because I didn't quite catch that she was talking about a side, I said, you know, I want my toast buttered for this meal. When they normally give you the butter, do it yourself. And she thought I was so rude, and all my classmates were just in tears laughing because it was the funniest thing for them because they knew me.
That's good. Well, I'll be thinking about that the next time we have toast. Really good. Any other, okay, well, let's go to topic, what's next? 5? Yes. So how, I know it's summertime, but how is or how was school going for you? And then for the parents, how did it go for your child? Any comments or feedback? Because we did talk about like the IUP this morning a little bit, so.
I'm doing good at school, and as long as my teacher and I remember to give each other the microphone, everything's fine. Sometimes everybody's loud, so that I can't hear her, and I just try and listen really hard, or I ask her to speak up a little bit.
She's doing really well with her advocating, and she seems to know when she needs help and what she needs to help herself with. And I think our hardest part is going to be going to a different school next year when her teacher of deaf is going to be not the same one she's had for the past 6 years. So that's going to be a struggle coming up in the fall, but I think she's gonna be advocating enough for herself that she'll be okay no matter who she has. But COVID was a little difficult. We had a hard time getting all the computer working, and there was supposed to be a closed caption, and it never worked, and so that was a struggle, but we pulled through and had a great year this year. So.
The person who helped with the advocacy was Miss Purdy, and I've been with her for 6 years, so I'm gonna miss her.
So for me, it's going pretty well. Like, I just finished my freshman years, and I got, like, the transition to high school wasn't too bad. It was pretty easy. But the only thing is, I do tend to play this game where I ignore all the schoolwork until I have 15 missing assignments. And then I just continue to ignore it and don't do it.
Yeah, that's true. I think, Maisie knows what she needs to do. She has the skills to advocate for herself. But just last night, when we were talking to some other parents, she said something about, well, yeah, my teachers don't turn the captioning on. Well, you need to ask them to. And Maisie kind of has always been, if she asks you once, she's taking care of it. So if her teachers don't turn on the captioning, they chose not to. And there was a reason, she's not gonna push it. And so I think that is an area of growth, is just be able to be a little more assertive, and sometimes she feels like she's asking for special favors, and she doesn't want to burden anybody. And so that's just an area that I think she can continue to grow in, but she's on the honor roll, so she's good student.
So also, like with the microphone and like captioning, so when I have the microphone, I have my normal teachers that I have like every day. They're pretty good about it. Like, either there were some teachers that I didn't give it to because either they were just pretty loud or they didn't talk very much. But also subs I didn't give it to, like substitute teachers I didn't give it to them. And there was one issue that I had with the math sub that was, my teacher was out for knee surgery, and the sub was playing a video that was like telling us how to do this worksheet that my teacher was narrating, and I asked her to turn it up, and she just completely ignored me. I asked her multiple times. And got ignored.
That's really frustrating, Matthew, because I've had that happen too in the past for me, but like, for me, advocacy changed when I transitioned from high school to college, because your responsibilities are a little bit different and services are a little bit different. In high school, I used an FM system and, you know, had preferential seating and all this extra stuff, but then when I transitioned to college, there were some issues with procuring an FM system that would be compatible with both my hearing aid and my cochlear implant at the time. So we ended up just going with transcribing services, which actually I liked a lot more than the FM systems, because it's captions for life is how one of my transcribers called it. But I spent a lot of more prep time, I guess, for advocating. I came up with a letter that I would email to all of my professors shortly before the start of each semester, you know, just giving them a heads up. You know, this is who I am, these are my needs, this is the services that are going to be, you know, in the class, and of course you'll get an email from Disability Services soon about it. But I found that I actually worked a lot more closely with my teachers once I transitioned into college than I ever did in high school. And then I guess my one thing for you parents out there would be to try and hold on to the IEPs if you ever do need to end up showing documentation of past accommodations, because that will make things a lot easier for your child when they're older. Because look, my child has had these accommodations in the past. They have proved to be very helpful in helping my child reach their full potential. So can you please continue to get these accommodations in the future? And if not these accommodations, then can we try something else?
Very good. Is there another slide after this? I think it's question, topic 6, when it comes to your hearing, who knows best about what you need to do well? You or your parents? And you kind of answered that, but let's hear it. Who knows best what you need?
I know best because Miss Purdy helped me with the advocacy, and I listened and I did them better than her.
So I think I agree. I think I know best because like she thinks she does, but like she's not asshole to me every day. Like she doesn't know the teachers like I do, and doesn't really won't understand every single situation like I do, because like she's not there. She passed her requirements for school. No longer required to school.
I guess to continue on the trend, like I do feel like I know best about what I need to do well, but my mom has had some really good suggestions that I try to incorporate, like whether it's advocacy or strategies or something else that I need to do. So I do listen to her sometimes, not always, but sometimes.
I will say that the students, that our children, they know best, but I know there are times like when I feel like, I advocated for you to have this, you have to use it. And we've had some arguments. When she was taking the ACT or SAT in high school, we got special arrangements for her to be in a quiet environment. I didn't realize a quiet environment would be in the school psychologist's office with just that person. And she was pretty furious with me. And I'm like, Gabby, I was worried about you being in a large room and not being able to hear the instructions. And so there were some discussions. I think I won that one.
She did.
Wow, that's good. That was a fun question. Good answers too. Okay, and we've kind of addressed this. If you could tell everyone one thing, what would it be? You kind of shared that in your wisdom. Let's go ahead and move into questions from everyone, anyone. Any questions? You've got some great people here that might be able. Oh, okay, hand in the back. I'm going to bring you a microphone now.
question is, during COVID and the pandemic, how did people wearing masks affect you?
Thank you, Joe. No, mine's all go first. But yeah, no, I really have struggled a lot this past year during the pandemic with like just masks and all the, I'm not sure what word I use, I've had emails about this with people, but just all the protocols in place like for, you know, protection and whatnot, and I really struggled with it. Like I tutor at the university, so we tried to do something in person, and between the mask and the plexiglass barrier, I couldn't hear the other student, and you know, it just did not work out. We had a horrible tutoring session, and I just went straight after that to my boss and said, look, I need to be online. Like, I know you want us in person, but I can't. So like, I really have struggled with that aspect because I lip read a lot too. Like, I depend on both what I hear and what I lip read, and I did not realize how dependent on lip reading I was until it was taken from me.
It was a struggle because I couldn't really see the mouths, and there's with the glass thing or whatever. When we were at lunch, I couldn't understand them at all, so I tried to like just peek my ear over without getting in trouble, so that I could still hear them and not have them be mad at me or anything.
So for me, like I pick up a lot on like facial cues. Like not as much lip reading, but like a lot on like facial expressions and like body language. So like with half your face covered by a mask, you can't really tell when people are like the facial expressions are hard to read. So that was harder. Like you can't really tell if they're actually mad or whatever. Like it's hard, kind of like, yeah, it's really hard. But I don't think hearing was too big of a problem unless like people were talking around us. But then I would just like I just tended to like lean forward really far. And I'd just be like,
Good question. Other questions? I did hear someone was kind of wondering about activities outside of school, like sports or anything like that. Was there something that helped you to do well outside of school? Because there's more to life than just school, yeah?
Well, I play tennis, and my dad's the coach, so he kind of knows what to do, and he told the other coach, Tim, what to do, so that helped a lot, so it was easier to do that stuff. And then for basketball, the same thing, my dad was the coach, he told the other two coaches about it, and they all understood, so.
To add to that, her teacher of the deaf did part of her advocacy goal. They made a brochure that said, here's what you should know about my hearing loss, here's what helps me, here's what does not help me. I think you put it in the newsletter once because it was really cool. And she did a basketball camp, and these people from, I don't even know where they're from, Colorado Springs or something, and she just went right up and said, here's my brochure, and he loved it. He read it, he showed it to the rest of the coaches in front of the whole group. I mean, here's what helps me, here's what doesn't.
Wow.
Go from there.
I also ended up talking in front of everybody at that camp.
so like what you said about the brochure, last year when I was like getting ready to move into high school, the lady who was the teacher of the deaf, she helped me make kind of like a slideshow or like a paper that just told my teachers about me and like explained my hearing loss and what I needed and my accommodations.
I have also done a brochure in the past for, you know, because in high school, I did swimming and academic bowl and FFA, and like academic bowl and FFA were more accessible to me, but swimming is not, because like you can't get your cochlear implant or a hearing aid or whatever amplification your child uses. You can't get that wet. It's expensive. So what I did is, I think Sarah Purdy was my teacher of the deaf at the time too, so she helped me put together a brochure for my swim coaches, which I gave to them, but I also asked them to implement like a whiteboard system, write down exactly what we're doing for practice that day. And you know, so, because that will not only will help me, but it will help the other students. And then we came up with certain signals for certain exercises that we do constantly. And I also, the diving coach knew a little bit of sign language, so he would step in sometimes and help there as well. So like I had a mostly supportive environment, but it wasn't without its challenges, because like I can't hear the other kids in the water. It was very isolating. And I did spend a lot of time watching what the other kids do and copying exactly what they did, until my coaches were like, well, now you get to be the first swimmer in the lane. You know, because now they want me to show the other kids what we're doing today. And it's like, you have to learn how to advocate for yourself, and that is when the whiteboard system came in play. So I knew what we were doing, so I could lead. But that's just some of the strategies we use.
That's a good strategy, and we were talking earlier, another one is pre-teaching the language. So let's say you were learning to play tennis, and you have never learned about scoring. That would be important, you know, to have the terminology for how you score, what you call it in tennis, because it's different than how we score for, let's say, football or basketball. So, you know, just be thinking about that vocabulary. Questions, any other one? I don't know where we are with, oh, we're right on the dot, I think. Yeah, if you have a last minute question, now's the time. Anything's good.
You have till 2:15.
Oh, boy, you better start thinking of questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I'm hearing that having a teacher for the deaf in your school has been pivotal, and I'm wondering how you came about getting that, or if you just had a teacher in your district, or how you got one to come into your district to help you.
Well, since I was a teacher of the deaf before I was a mom, I knew how important it was, and I knew the differences and could speak to, I mean, I absolutely value the speech language pathologist. They did things with Maisie that I didn't do, but I knew the difference between what a teacher of the deaf brought to the table, what a speech therapist brought to the table, and so for me it was to just say, you know what, this is the expert in these areas. I need someone who can, you know, who understands. For example, at one point she was having some social, I mean, she just didn't fit in. And so I talked to the school, and they said, oh yeah, don't worry, we've got a perfect group for her, and it'll be perfect. And she came home the first day, and she was just kind of not herself. And, you know, she didn't really talk about it. And the next week she came home, and she just was not happy. And I said, what's going on? And she said, well, I don't understand. They put me in a bullying group. I'm not a bully. I'm not a mean kid. And I'm in this friend group for all the bullies. Everybody else in there is mean. Because that was the school's solution to, oh, well, it's a social issue. So I had to go back to the team and say, no, this really has everything to do with her hearing loss and not just run-of-the-mill social things. And that's why she needs a teacher of the deaf who can talk about those things. And then that became one of the things they worked on in their time together was, okay, what do? You know, lean in. And understanding that when you lean in, like she said, some people lean out. And so that's really what it was, is being able to say, no, here's what this person brings to the table. Here's what a teacher of the deaf would bring to the table.
Mine was just kind of like there, and pretty much all she did, not you.
No.
She basically just made me look at my audiogram every time we met. Like that's pretty much all we did. It's like, what do you
I think she just came with the IEP. No, I think it's when you transition from preschool to kindergarten, from preschool to public school, your team meets with the public school district and yes, you do need a teacher of the deaf, and it's like a speech therapist coming, but it's just a teacher of the deaf.
Did that teacher live in your community, or did she travel from a different?
No, we have a few here. We're in Casper, and she gets, you know, whoever it is gets assigned this school or.
So as a teacher, I have traveled for the last 4 or 5 years. So I don't live in the community that I work in.
Okay.
And this year I actually went about 5.5 hours away, one way, so.
Okay. How often would you go that far?
I went twice a month, and every day we did like a little virtual session.
Okay.
I love Betsy. She is very knowledgeable, and I'm so glad she's a part of Hands and Voices. And I have to say, with my daughter Gabrielle, when she was younger, I didn't understand the value of a teacher of the deaf. And so I didn't really know what they did, but I know that they have that specialized training to help educate the professionals that they work with, and can go into a classroom and say, well, let's look at the classroom. Boy, the acoustics in here are terrible. So they can help the teacher set up the classroom, even just the setup, like put curtains up, or why don't you use a U-shaped system to put the desks. So I have to say, unfortunately, I didn't utilize a teacher of the deaf to the best of my ability, or a lot when my daughter was younger, but they are so helpful, and I do think they are critical. And like Betsy says, like, we live in Natrona County, so it's a larger county. We have teachers of the deaf in Natrona County, but Betsy travels to other counties, and it's something that I would highly encourage the use of, and they've helped my daughter a lot, like learning how to advocate. Gabby has that folder that she said she kept her IEPs in. It came in so helpful for her afterwards, so they help a lot with advocacy, goal setting, just so many different things.
When your child moves from the IFSP, Individual Family Service Plan, to the IEP, the school district will provide a deaf educator. If they don't have one for your school district, they would contract out with another school district and get that in place. I want to just, for those of you that are new and starting out, that sometimes we feel like we don't want our kids to be labeled. We don't want them to have special ed. And I'm telling you that every kid deserves special ed. It's about looking at who we are individually. And for us, with hearing loss, it's about leveling the playing field and just making sure that we get the same information that the other kids get in the class. That's the goal. That is the goal. And I think you said earlier something about, like maybe getting favors or whatever, and it's not, or special privileges is not that. It's to get exactly what the other kids are getting.
So last night at the barbecue, I overheard Maisie say, somebody said something about, their child was smart. And Maisie said, I'm really smart and I have an IEP. And I think that's the message that sometimes we hear is, oh, but your child's doing so well. Oh, they're so bright. They are bright, but that doesn't mean that they don't have specialized needs that need attention.
I'm kind of smart.
Good point, very good point. This isn't based on, how poorly a child is doing. It's just to give them all of the opportunities so that they do well. And any other, oh yes.
So when you guys, as parents, decided that they needed a teacher of the deaf, what made that decision? What was it? The math, like the degree of hearing loss, or what decision does that make?
So when Maisie was first identified, she had a very, very mild loss. And at that time, again, there were just things about how she was learning, how she was, socially was really the biggest piece. Just realizing, you know what? And we had a very, very supportive speech language pathologist as well, who said, we need a teacher of the deaf. So it was the team, but we had a really supportive team, so that was helpful.
I didn't know we had an option.
It just,
It just literally just came with the idea, I don't know. It was just a natural thing, and I think Natrona County being a bigger one in the state kind of helped, because there were more than some of the other smaller communities, which was beneficial for us, but it just came.
I will say, Gabby, we started having the teacher of the deaf consistently in kindergarten, but I didn't feel like, oh, because I didn't know what they did, you know, I'm like, oh, well, we can do 30 minutes a month, but that really wasn't enough. So, but we had the Wyoming Department of Ed, the ladies who spoke earlier, they provided consultative services to our Child Development Center when she was younger, and I really highly recommend that as well, because they can go in to your child's center and make recommendations. But we really started at kindergarten, but as she got older, that's when I increased the total number of minutes that they worked with my daughter.
And to add to that, there is an individual education plan that qualifies you for the services, and it may, I don't know how it works in Wyoming, but in Colorado you have to have a certain degree of hearing loss. Yeah, so like, but it's still pretty good. And then if there's some other issues, social, advocacy, maybe they need extra support in math or reading, they take that into account. So yeah, but you can always ask. You always, you know, can ask, where is this person? Can they be part of this?
I would just say, to add on to that, not to take no for an answer right away either, because we were denied heavily at the Children's Developmental Services. Christy would come in once in a while, but they really didn't like her help, so they wouldn't have her come regularly. And then I had to fight pretty hard to get a teacher of the deaf once we transitioned to public school, but I would say just fight for it and don't take no for an answer either.
Any other questions or comments? I think we will. Oh, yes.
So, what you said about like fighting for stuff, when I was like going into high school last year, something that we did was like, my mom, like we arranged for me to have like a study hall at the end of the day so that I could just like catch up on all my schoolwork and like make sure that everything was done, and just to like ease that transition into high school.
Okay, and I think we have 1 minute, so one word for everyone. What do you like to do for fun? Because we talked a lot about play and fun and language. Okay, you go first.
I love walking dogs with my friend and just being with animals.
I like reading and riding my bike, and I also like to write, like sometimes and doodle.
I love to read, I love to cook for my family or for anybody else.
I also really like taking pictures.
I play tennis.
I also take random pictures of the skies.
That's awesome. I really like reading and just like art, and then I also am working on teaching, well, it was really my parents' dog, but I call him my dog, teaching him some new tricks too.
I like reading, I like going hiking, and I like photography.
That is great. Thank you so much.